The Holy Gospel according to St. Luke, the 8th chapter. Then Jesus and his disciples arrived at the country of the Gerasenes, which is opposite of Galilee. As he stepped out on land, a man of the city who had demons met him. For a long time he had worn no clothes, and he did not live in a house, but in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he fell down before him and shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me." For Jesus had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. For many times it had seized him. He was kept under guard and bound with chains and shackles, but he would break the bonds and be driven by the demon into the wilds. Just then, Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Legion," for many demons had entered him. They begged him not to order them to go back into the abyss. Now there was a hillside, and a large herd of swine was feeding there, and the demons begged Jesus to let them enter these. So Jesus gave them permission. Then the demons came out of the man and entered the swine, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and was drowned. When the swine herders saw what had happened, they ran off and told in the city and in the country. Then people came out to see what happened, and when they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. Those who had seen it told them how the one who had been possessed by demons had been healed. Then all the people of the surrounding country of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them, for they were seized with great fear. So Jesus got into the boat and returned. The man from whom the demons had gone begged that he might be with him, but Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return to your home and declare how much God has done for you." So he went away, proclaiming throughout the city how much Jesus had done for him. The Gospel of the Lord. Please be seated. Grace, peace, and mercy are yours from the triune God. Amen. That's a good story. I like that story. It's one of my favorite ones. There are demons, there's community involvement, there are economic losses, there's a history lesson, there are pigs. Super fun. And we could talk about this text a lot. This text, though, reminded me, for whatever reason, of this guy I met recently. His name is Steve, and I was working at Lady Justice Brewing Company trying to solidify some details we have on this little program for healthcare workers there. And Steve comes in to the brewery. And the brewery is on Colfax and Dayton, so right in old downtown Aurora. And there's a lot of foot traffic there. And the guy walks in, and the bartender greets him and calls him by his name, Steve. The bartender automatically gets him a drink of water, like he had done that almost every day for a long time now. And I was sitting there, and this guy then had a pretty loud conversation with the bartender. And I looked around at some of the people there, and it felt a little tense. Not because the guy was upset or angry or anything like that. He was just a little louder, talked a little different. People have this preconceived notion of the clientele that come into breweries drinking $7 beers when there's a liquor store across the street. And people at the brewery have these nice, quiet conversations with each other, and they drink their beers. And Lady Justice does a pretty good job of fighting some of this white culture, quiet-centered culture, but this guy caught people off guard. Steve was just a little different. He wasn't bad. He wasn't rude. It's just not what people had expected. Pretty soon, Steve then started talking to the strangers, and people shifted uncomfortably on their bar stools, trying to just get through the conversation to sort of pacify him with short answers, and they avoided eye contact with him. And he wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just a little more friendly than maybe people were used to. People don't talk to strangers. And he had a conversation with people all the way across the bar, yelling across the bar, and he didn't recognize the boundaries that people were setting for him. He wasn't drunk. He was just different. His brain worked different. He operated outside of folks' norms. Pretty soon after he had asked several people questions and gotten really short answers, and no one asked him any questions in return, he said, I'll never forget this, "Well, I must be bothering you nice people, I guess." And he pulled his coat back on and put his hat down, pushed his bar stool in, and he walked out the door. He looked really disappointed. And you could feel shame in the room for how we all ignored this guy, but also a little relief because our little bubble of quiet expectations had just been reestablished. Have you ever experienced something like this? Maybe not in a bar, but maybe on the street with somebody asking for money. Maybe somebody with their car windows down playing music just a little too loud in the neighborhood. Like I said earlier, we could talk about a lot of stuff in the Bible story today because it is awesome. But what has been sticking with me is the fear that we find in the story and what that means for our own relationships. And I want to try something with you all today. I'm hoping to maybe work on some answers together. Please feel free to look back at your text in your bulletin and to holler out. This is interactive. It's not a test. We are just getting to know one another a little better. The first question I have about this is, when we read this text, what are the people in the story afraid of? Where do we encounter fear? The unknown? Okay. Say more about that, Claudette. Sure. Okay. Okay. Where else? What's that? Afraid to get involved. Okay. How's that, Ron? Oh, it's good. It's good. They were afraid of Jesus. Yeah. Why were they afraid of Jesus? Yeah. Who else is afraid of Jesus? What? The demons? Sure. Yeah. Maybe the man. It's kind of unclear whether or not the man is saying or the demons are talking, "Jesus, don't torment me." It's unclear. Now, that's perfect. Those are good answers. And we're going to put that on the back burner for a moment, and we're going to come back to it. For right now, I have another question, and this is a little bit harder of a question. The text says that they bound the man and they guarded him day and night. Why did the people chain this guy up? They were afraid he was going to act crazy. Okay. Yeah. What else? They were afraid of what he might do. Okay. They wanted to control him. They wanted to keep him in his spot, in his place. They were afraid of the demons? Sure. Yeah. Those are good answers too. He had demons. I imagine he was loud and annoying. I, though, looking back at this text, was surprised to see that the people weren't afraid of him. At least that's not what the text says. We could read that. The people knew, though, what this guy would do. They had lived with this man. It doesn't say that he harmed people. If he was a danger to them, I imagine something worse would have happened to this man. It says he acted weird. He was naked all the time. Probably smelled bad. He probably wasn't very clean. They were annoyed. He was bothersome and loud. He was an inconvenience to their world, so they tried to control him. But they couldn't. And when they couldn't, they pushed him away out of their community to live among the dead. When Jesus lands on the shore and he encounters the demonic man from Gerasenes, we don't get annoyance from this man who names himself Legion. What we get is fear. He begs Jesus on his hands and knees not to torment him. Torment. That is interesting. We don't hear a lot about Jesus the tormentor. This man thinks Jesus is going to do him harm, but all that Jesus is going to do is heal him. He is going to cast out demons. He is going to give him his life back. But not all healing is easy. Maybe it hurts to let go of our demons. But this man has access to new life, and it is scary, and it is going to involve some real changes. The man is cured after some negotiations with the demons inside of him, and hearing about what happened, the whole town comes out to the lake to see for themselves, and they see their neighbor there sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind, and they are terrified. They are afraid. Now, I have always read this story that they are afraid of Jesus, you know, the kind of fear that we talk about, fearing and honoring God. But this week, I don't know if that's what's going on here. I think that they were afraid of the man, their neighbor, because he is not who they thought that he was. They were wrong about him. They aren't afraid when they see the man possessed by demons. That's what they expect of this guy. They aren't afraid when he is being loud and annoying. They aren't afraid when they see this member of their community. They are afraid when they see this member of their community clothed and sitting in his right mind with all the dignity and wholeness of a normal person. Despite their best efforts to contain this very strange man who was maybe hard to be around, who was maybe easier to push away than to actually know, they now had to face the facts that this was a real human being, a created and beloved child of God. And then they had to admit that they did not treat him that way. They shackled him. They pushed him away from the community, and now they had to deal with their feelings. They had to deal with their own relationship issues. They had to deal with the hurt and pain in the community that they were responsible for. And they were afraid. It was too much. Preferring to stay in their bubble, choosing instead to keep things as they were, being unwilling to examine their own fault, they refused to change, and they asked Jesus to leave. Now, I shared this story about this man in the brewery, but I am wondering if we can think about some ways that this has happened to all of us. Are there ways where we were unable to bring our own selves with all of our experiences into a conversation, into relationship with other people, to be fully part of the community because we felt like we would be pushed away if we rocked the boat, if we disturbed the status quo? So we instead hid in our tombs and avoided life. We developed some distrust, and our demons multiplied until it was so difficult to face the pain and hurt that it felt like torment to let it go and to find actual healing. And I wonder if there are times where we're on the opposite end of it and we push people away in our own lives, in our own families, in our own communities, in our own church even, because we feel too uncomfortable to get to know people who are different than us. And we try and shackle and control them in the way they interact with us. And when that doesn't work, we push them away. Friends, we are all the people in this story, myself included, very much. Like the demonic, who hasn't begged to hold on to our vices, our control, our pride, our comfort? Who hasn't gone through the agony of change, but know that deep down it is necessary for us to get out of our tomb and back into life? Who hasn't begged Jesus not to torment them? Who hasn't tried to silence a part of their heart, but who been forced back to face our own demons by the only one who can really heal? And like the Gerasenes in town who were afraid to face their own demon of exclusion, who hasn't pushed someone away because they made them feel uncomfortable, because they were loud or spoke differently or learned differently, because they smelled, because they were poor, because they left a mess, because they weren't Lutheran, because they were gay, because they were young, because they were old, because their skin looked different than theirs. Instead of learning about this person or group that makes us feel uncomfortable, instead of inviting them and to bring their whole selves into the community as a way to add to the beautiful vibrancy of the family of God, we push them away because we didn't want to learn. We didn't want to change our assumptions. And when we realize that, when we admit that we can do two things. We can either ask Jesus and his gospel to just move along because it's too hard to hear, choosing instead to remain in our own tombs and shut off one another. Or we can face our demons. We can deal with the discomfort, and we can heal together. We can experience a full community that acknowledges every single person as a unique, worthy child of God. What will we choose? Amen.